German, right? The hour is late, but we've been watching this amazing documentary. And Evgeny, this movie is not about big politics or politicians. You show the voices of ordinary people, of doctors and soldiers and children and parents and journalists and priests. And for these two long years, we're all struck.
For the last 10 years.
Yes, for 10 years, and for 2 years since the full-scale invasion. Thank you for pointing that out, because of course Evgeny is absolutely right that the war began in 2014. But what I wanted to say is also that in the midst of this abhorrent nightmare and these extreme atrocities, we've all been so struck by the resilience of the Ukrainian people and this amazing mobilization. So can you explain to us, I mean, how is it possible? They're bombing maternity ward, they're massacring children in a theater, they are causing starvation and ecocide. Can you explain the anatomy of the Ukrainian resilience?
I think I learned this resilience on Maidan. That was my first experience. And when the full-scale invasion started in 2022, I was asked by many major media outlets, why? And you know what? It's the homeland. They're fighting for their homeland. They don't have another land. They don't have another home. So their resilience is coming from the history. They're defending their home. And I remember how in 2022, I said it was second day of full-scale invasion. I was asked by CNN. I said, you know what, Ukrainian people rather take a bullet than they will submit. That's what you can see. I saw it on Maidan in 2013, 14. And I saw it through the last 10 years of the war and through the last 2 horrifying years of the full-scale invasion. And no matter if European Union will help or not, Ukraine will not give up. But the most important to remember that this is World War III, and they are defending the rest of the world. They're defending you, they're defending us Americans. They're defending democracy, they're defending human rights, that we can see violations every day. I just came from Kyiv 2 days ago, actually. And for me, it's absolutely understandable why they're fighting.
I can assure you that the European Union and all the allies, United States and many more, are going to support Ukraine, as we always say, as long as it takes. But also, Anya, we saw you just on the screen. You spent 65 days in Azovstal together with your little baby son. He was just a couple of months old. And we saw some footage from there. But can you still, for this audience, also describe what life was there, down in that shelter, in that gigantic steelworks? And can you also tell us about your resilience, how it developed during those months?
So good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming this night here. Speaking about these 65 days in Azovstal, I have to say that it was a real challenge for me. It was a challenge like for a human, but also like for a mother. And only due to Mariupol defenders, I can be here today in front of you, because they did their best to save us, civil people, to save thousands of civilians of Mariupol. Actually, it was really so hard for me to stay motivated there. And I think the secret of my resilience, my personal resilience, was in my baby. And I think this is also the resilience of every Ukrainian, because we are fighting for our families, we are fighting for our homeland, we are fighting for our national identity, we are fighting for our language.
Yeah, we all saw little beautiful Sviatoslav, and I know I've seen him recently here with you in Berlin. Yevgeny, you dedicated this movie to all journalists, filmmakers, and members of the press who have been killed and who are risking their lives in the world's conflict zones. And we all know that the dangers for journalists and media workers has only increased, and more of them are paying with their lives. And can you tell us a little bit how it is to document a war zone? The security points, of course, but also from a psychological point of view. I mean, I think many of us here tonight, we cried numerous times. Did you cry when you were shooting, when you were editing? And how did that affect your work?
As you know, and it's the first time that we're meeting, I never usually not watching the movie. We both were at the premiere at Venice, and we literally both were crying, sitting and crying. Usually when you're working, you're able to put yourself strong. But then, I guess, the moment of realization comes. And then, for me personally, it's tough because I'm putting it through myself. And again, trauma from time to time hits. I'm talking about post-traumatic syndrome. And yes, tears comes. Because we're all humans. I'm seeing these kids and I'm a father. So it's not easy at all. It's not easy at all. So one of the reasons why I was most of the time outside of the cinema right now, because I can't watch it, just entered by the end. So it's painful, and I hope I can allow people from across the globe to feel this pain that I feel, pain that Anya feels, pain that Ukrainian people are feeling when Russians bombing maternity hospitals, or trauma theaters, or churches, or just ordinary civilian homes. And I think that's what I was trying to bring through the movie. I was showing resilience and incredible humanity. I was trying to bring the human face of the war from the side of Ukrainian people. At the same time, I wanted to show how much pain they have in every day. But for me, they're heroes. And going back to your question, it's not easy compared to the Maidan situation, because Maidan was much more practical. It was one city. Here, it's entire country under the attack. So it's not easy from security points. It's not easy to go through the whole process of getting the proper permits. But you know what? It's all been done. I have amazing crew, and a portion of the crew is here. I have amazing Galina Sadomtseva. I have amazing, Inna and Victor, who is sitting here in front of me, who been working with me since Maidan movie. And you know what? This crew been behind my back and supporting me on all these shoots.
Thanks to all of you. Thanks for being here. But Anya, you're not a journalist. I mean, you were, when we met the first time, you said, I was just a normal young girl. And now where you're actually traveling, and it's not the first time that we meet either. You've been traveling with Yevgeny, you've been doing advocacy, screening the film, joining this kind of panel as we're having here. And Anya even addressed the American Congress. And you told me that you were a little bit nervous. Yeah, I can understand that. And then your father told you that you survived Azovstal. I mean, you can do anything. But can you tell us why it's so important for you, why you now decided to take on this role and to use your voice about what's happening?
Actually, it's an honor for me to be the voice of people who are right now, unfortunately, voiceless, to be the voice of the prisoners of war. My husband is still in captivity, like 900 Azov regiment soldiers, and also like 2,000 Mariupol defenders. Around 2 years, they are in Russian prisons, and unfortunately, we even don't know if they are alive or not. We don't know the exit conditions where they are living right now. Sometimes we even don't know their places because Russians are trying to hide them, so it's difficult to find in which cities they are. And also, it's really it's our harsh reality, the reality of the relatives of the prisoners of war, because Russians, they are neglecting all Geneva Conventions, and we don't know if our relatives have proper access to proper food, water, medicine supply. We know definitely that they are tortured, because some of them, they were returned home, they were returned to Ukraine, and we see that sometimes they lost, for example, around 45% of their weight. So that's why I feel like this is my duty. I want to do my best to liberate these people. I don't know who could help me. Maybe people in Congress, maybe people in Canada, maybe people in Europe. I just feel like I have to do it, because these people, they were doing everything in order to save my life and the life of my child in Azovstal. So right now I have to do the same for them.
So we're all hoping and praying for your husband. And I know that it was, how many months ago was it that you actually heard something from him?
Unfortunately, the last time when I heard something about him was in May, as you have seen in the movie. So this is the last time when I've seen him physically.
And we talked about the traumas. I mean, both of you said you cannot watch the movie. You talk about your traumas. You have told me that also little wonderful Sviet, who was 3 months when he was then 65 days together with Anya and Azovstal, that he is also suffering from some kind of post-traumatic stress syndrome. And you just came back from Kiev, Yevgeny, also. What, 10 years from the first invasion, 2 years from the full-scale invasion, the composition of Ukrainian society looks different now. I mean, there are so many victims, there are so many people who lost beloved ones, there are orphans, there are veterans, and there are still so many people at the front. Can you tell us a little bit what these traumas make to society, to the fabric of the society, to the mental health of people right now in Ukraine? Evgeny, do you want to start?
I think it's, rather than just rebuild Ukraine, it's really important to rebuild the minds and the mental health of the people. I was, last week and a half, I was with a lot of kids. Some of them lost their parents in front of their eyes. Some been abducted by Russians and been brought back, and they've been brainwashed while they were in Russia. Some kids lost legs or been burned. They all need mental health. They're the future generation. They're the generation that will be building free and democratic Ukraine. And we need to help them. And I never said this in media, but I can say it right now, I guess. One of the things that I'm doing right now in Ukraine, it's going to be a next project. It's about to bring attention to these little ones, to their voices, and to the need of their mental health. And it's not just the kids, it's also veterans, and it's also ordinary people who are suffering from PTSD, because there is a trauma that literally surrounding us everywhere, but at the same time there is also a secondary trauma that is re-traumatization, and you can see it's also affecting people. So really the mental health becoming a really big issue these days, but specifically for the younger generation and for the veterans, because they need to become back part of society. Younger generation will be building Ukraine, and the veterans and the soldiers need to return back to normal life. So they both really need help. Anchika wants to talk, because you are literally dealing with this on a day-by-day basis, because you are surrounded by friends who are part of the Azov Steel regiment, and you're seeing them and you're seeing how it's affecting them.
Yeah, you know, it's difficult to return from the front line physically, but sometimes it's a paradox, but it's more difficult to return from the front line mentally, emotionally. It's my personal experience. I remember how it was with me when I came out of the shelter, and first of all, Ukrainian government, they provided some kind of programs. They gave us some psychological help, and my first word was, no, everything is fine with me. I don't need the psychological help. I will manage by myself. But then later, I realized that it was my mistake. So that's why it's so important right now to provide more and more mental health projects in Ukraine. Me personally, I'm right now involved in 2 programs which are connected with veterans. One is with epitherapy, and another one is psychological writing. So in such way, when veterans are writing their own stories, it helps them to make their trauma to the experience, and also at the same time we can get a lot of stories from them, how it is to be on the front line, and also maybe later they could publish their books, and also it will be the part of the information war which we have to get a victory.
And since Annie mentioned information war, in all my speeches that I'm doing with this movie, I'm openly saying we are living in a World War III, where it's hybrid war. The World War III that we're experiencing today, on one side, have missiles, drones, ballistic missiles, explosives, all kind of sophisticated weapons. But we also have media. Media that became a very sophisticated weapon. It can destroy minds of people, and I'm not talking about 1, 2, 3. It can destroy millions and millions. And for this media weapon, they don't need visa. It's crossing European borders. It's crossing our American borders. And sometimes we even not feeling how the propaganda machine surrounding us, and many people already believing in something that not exist, but it's what media sells. And I think that's why, for me, I showed certain things in the movie pointing that today the war is the hybrid war. And we need to be really careful. And for me, when we're talking about journalists are the soldiers on the media front. That's why in March and April 2022, Putin's gangs were literally hunting, that's the word probably properly to use, hunting journalists, photojournalists, hunting people who were trying to document the history, trying to document the truth and bring it from the front lines. And that was my dedication to the journalists by this movie. So that's why it's important to remember that today we live in the gates of the World War III, and that this war is not just happening in Ukraine. We are all experiencing this war around us.
And thanks for picking that up, because as a result of this massive disinformation and propaganda, and of course Russia's complete indifference to their losses, and perhaps a belief that Russia, so to say, can outweigh the West. I mean, you and many, we're also now facing something which is sometimes called a Ukraine fatigue. And it's a fatigue that sometimes is combined with this misleading narrative that there is some kind of untested diplomatic ground where negotiations with Putin could prevent the loss of life. And I would like to know from you, I mean, we're all now knowing that we can only do this together. Yes, we know as Europeans, as Americans, and as ILAD that the Ukraine is fighting our war, but how can we mobilize further against this fatigue? How can we mobilize against this wishful thinking and sometimes propaganda that there is some kind of peace negotiations that haven't been tried? And what can we do more to support Ukraine? Perhaps you want to start.
So So first of all, I want to remind that when we are speaking about fatigue, for example, in Europe, in USA, and people, they are saying that, oh, we are so tired of all this bad news every day. For us, for Ukrainians, this is our everyday routine. For our children, this is our everyday routine, because could you imagine your children on this place? Could you imagine that our children, they know how to be orphans. They know how to live with prosthetic legs, prosthetic arms. They know about the rule of 2 walls in order to save a life. And me personally, I don't want your children to be on that place. And every time when people in Europe or USA are speaking about the fatigue, I would like to add that you are paying with your money, you are paying with your missiles, we are paying the highest price, we are paying with our blood.
And I think we need to remember that in 1994, it was Budapest Memorandum, which was signed by America, UK, Europeans, that in order to make this world a better place and safer place, Ukraine gave up to the 3rd largest amount of the nuclear power weapon. And the guarantees were to keep Ukraine safe against any enemy. So I think there is a moral obligation, and there is, of course, the legal obligation, we can say, by this memorandum, that many countries need to stand for Ukraine. That's number one. But number two, I think it's important to remind that, like I said, it's World War III. We had every century that brought us some kind of dictator who tried to take over the world. In 1812 we had Napoleon, 1939, 1945 we know, we had Hitler. And this century gave us another dictator who have imperialistic desire to take over the world. We know that, and he openly talking about this. He have the Peter the Great complex already and talks on his behalf. So we know that, it's not news. So if we want to preserve this world, if we don't want to repeat a mistake that happened in 2014-15, many of you probably saw my movie Winter on Fire. Many of you know when Maidan ended, the war started. But the world forgot about this. MH17 was a red flag that the world kind of neglected. The world neglected this start of this war. And then it's brought to the more catastrophic war in 2022. The crimes of 8 years been neglected, which allows Putin to go and start full-scale invasion. Now, if right now we will go into the war fatigue and we will abstract again ourselves from this war, what can be next? What will be the next escalation of this war? Nuclear? End of the world? Or we will allow Putin continue his crimes and take over next countries after Ukraine? So I think there is a very simple thing: to sit and decide what is better. To end this world tomorrow and allow old madman to destroy this world, or to help Ukraine to stand and fight for us. It's not about war fatigue, it's about logic. And it's about learning lessons of the past.
Hear those words, yes, like you said, definitely an applause. And as we said, it's getting late. We heard that your next project is giving more voice to Ukrainian children. I think all of us look very much forward to seeing your next production. But Anya, as a wrap-up, before we close, I would actually like to ask you about your plans. You have now been almost these 2 years in Berlin, but I understand that you have some other plans. Would you like to share them with us, and also tell us a little bit how come and what you would like to do?
During these 2 years, I was I was advocating for the prisoners of war. I was advocating also for the deported children, because I would like to remind you that 745,000 of Ukrainian children are deported by force to Russia. Russians call this process evacuation of our children. Right now I'm going to return to Kiev, and I want to become a paramedic and to join my friends militaries on the front line.
That definitely also deserves an applaud, and I would like to thank everybody for staying on this panel. And as a kind of closing, I really want to emphasize that despite this abhorrent and turned nightmare of awful atrocities and unbearable suffering, there are so many amazing, inspiring examples of this resilience and courage and solidarity. And as much as all these places, Bucha, Irpin, Hostomel, Mariupol, Bakhmut, and so forth, they will always take their place in history's hall of horror, I think the words bravery, resolve, and resistance will always be associated and related to Ukraine. Please give Evgeny Afanevsky and Anya Zaitseva a warm round of applause.
Thank you. And I want to end this event with something very simple. When we all were on Maidan, it was a big poster with a big drop of water. And after this drop of water, it was said, each of us is a drop of water, but together we're an ocean. So let's be together with Ukraine. Let's stand together and let's win this war.
Слава Україні!
Слава!